So today we're going to be looking at worm farming. I'm coming to this talk to you every single day. For 4 days I've missed it, and I've said to them, sorry, you're on your own. I'm going to worm farm. So yesterday, one of the women was standing next to me listening. I was trying to listen from there while I was listening half the ear to other people. And she was really getting very entertained and very enthusiastic about this worm farm. And I said to her, oh, have you got a big garden? She said, I've got no garden, but I'm getting worms. I said, what are you going to do with the worms? She said, you know, when we were little, we all had silkworms. She says, well, these worms are the adult equivalent of silkworms. So I thought maybe I need to get myself some grown-up pets. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha, for the nice introduction. I don't know if I'm the YouTube star yet, but you're welcome to go to my YouTube channel. It's called Bark Unlimited. So if you just go search it, you will find it, and there's lots of videos there. We've got almost 50 videos now, and we're aiming to add one more video every week. And some of the videos will be product videos where we just introduce a product or our new packaging to you, so that you know what to look out for in the garden centers. And if you go to your garden center and they don't have our products, please ask them to get it, and they will get it for you. If more people ask for quality product in their garden centers, they will have to be forced to stock it, and you can benefit from having those great products there. So I thought it good. I want to ask you guys a thing. I want to see how wake up you are, or if you fast asleep or you wake up, or they say if you're running in a race and you pass the guy who's in second place, in what position in that race are you? Okay, all right, you guys are awake. Because if you pass the guy in second place, then you're in second place, right? So you have to pass the guy who's in first place to be first. All right, so that was just a bit of a brain teaser. And that was a mental one, and I want to do another mental one on you. And you can see I brought a liquidizer, and obviously we've got worms in this bin. So what we'll be doing this afternoon, everybody who cooked food, and even myself with a specworm video yesterday, we made people taste our products. So we'll have some worms. We're going to make a worm smoothie, and then we're going to taste the worms. All right. No, I'm just joking. We're not going to do that. We won't kill the worms. All right. We need them. We need them to stay alive. We've decided to do these little worm farms. They're fairly inexpensive, and they're extremely easy to set up, and it's extremely easy to keep worms. If you regard them as your pets, this is probably the most easiest pet to keep ever in your life. You can, if you feed them properly and they're wet enough, you can go on holiday for 4 or 5 weeks, and when you come back, they'll be very happy to see you. They will still be alive, and they will still be well. They won't run away. Even if you've got fireworks over December, they're not going to go anywhere, all right? So when you order your worm farm from the nursery, a lot of the nurseries won't stock this because it's got live worms inside. So you'll have to go to your nursery and ask them to get you the worm farm. You're going to pay for it, and within a week we'll deliver it to the nursery, and they will phone you up and you can come and collect your worm farm. So when you get your worm farm, you'll notice there are actually 2 lids, and in the past we sold these worm farms with 1 lid only, and I'll explain to you now why we're doing a second lid. And when you open it up, you'll find there's a bag of Bark Unlimited compost in the worm farm. Now we're going to use some of this compost to start the worm farm off with. We're not going to use all of it, and you can keep the rest of your bag, because if you don't have enough food scraps, then you can add a layer of compost in the worm farm, just to keep your worms well fed. So we'll show you now how to use that. And then also there are 2 little pink pots in the worm farm. These are for the lady worms. Now I'm just joking again. We're going to use them to create a space, but I'll show you how to do that. And then there's a bottle with worm chow. Now this is all the vitamins and minerals and the grit that the worm needs to have a good digestive system. So this you will use as a supplement for your worms. So the same way you would take a food supplement for those people who go to gym, you get the protein shake or something like that just to help you build a bit of muscle and to keep you healthy, or some vitamin pills, and this has got the same effect on the worms. So we'll demonstrate to you how to use that, and then obviously the stars of the show, the worms, and there's about between 400 and 500 worms in a container like this, depending on the size of the worms. So if they're smaller, there will be more. If they're bigger, there will be a few less. And we put about 50 grams of worms in here, because I'm not going to go count 500 worms one by one and do 20 worm farms a day. And then we've also got our manual. I'm going to open up this one. And this is a manual that I've written myself, and I've done it in Afrikaans on the one side. See, this is sealed properly. So I've done it in Afrikaans on the one side, and on the other side it's in English. And the only reason I didn't do it in the other languages is because I don't understand the other languages. So you'll see that we've used animated pictures. And on page 1 we discuss the setting up of the worm farm. Page 2 we discuss the feeding of the worm farm. And then on page 3 we've got alternative sources of income when you've got a worm farm. Maybe you want to sell some of the worms to a fisherman, and you can get up to R1 for an earthworm, because these worms, these specific worms, are called red wigglers. They're the best worms for fishing, but they're also the best worms for generating liquid fertilizer, and also worm casting compost, which is high in nutrients and also high in microorganisms which you can use in your garden. And then we've got some controlling factors. So let's say, for instance, you live in a very cold area. You must at all costs avoid the worm farm going under 5 degrees Celsius, because then the worms will die. If they go over 34 degrees, they will also die. But they're very happy, anything in between, say, 16, 17, up to 28 degrees Celsius, they're very happy. And I found that, the placement of a worm farm is actually very important. I've got some worms in my garage, and it doesn't get any afternoon sun. So it's fairly cool in there, and those worms are not performing so well because it's actually a little bit too cold. But then on top of my garage, I've got a double-story building. So on the top story, I've got a couple of worm farms in there, and those worms are doing extremely well. And but that building gets afternoon sun, so it's a lot warmer in there. So you will see when you dig into the worm farm, into this, the castings in the worm farm, if you see the worms are very sluggish and they don't want to move around, then you know it might be too cold. And if you open them up and they immediately duck for cover because they're light sensitive, they want to go down into the soil when you disturb them, then you know they're nice and active. And you want them active because you want them to eat the food that you put in here. And then on the last page, we've just got some general notes, a little bit of information on our business, and then obviously all the contact details and so on. So why we've decided to go with the animation is for the kids, to get them interested. We as grown-ups enjoy the animation pictures, and the children are very fond of this. So then we've got 2 different bins. This one has got no holes in it, so we're going to use this for collecting the worm tea. And it's got a sticker on the front to say that it's our worm farm, and on the back it's got a quick guide on what you can put into the worm farm, what foods to avoid and which ones are better. And then we've got another bin. It's got some holes in the bottom for drainage, and it's got some holes on the side, and that will be for aeration, so that oxygen can get into the worm farm, because the worms are living creatures like us. They also need oxygen. The 2 little pink pots we're going to use to create a space in the bottom of the bin, and we're going to place them like that, facing, opening of the pot facing upwards. The reason for that being is because we've got holes in the bottom of the pot. If you put the pot like that, you create a space in between this pot and the bin, and the worms will actually crawl out and go sit between this little plastic pot and the top bin. So if we put the pots in like that, and we put the top one in, you'll see we've now created a cavity at the bottom for all the liquids to collect. And you don't want your worm bin sitting like that, because if the liquids go through, it's going to collect in the bottom of this top one as well, especially if it's very wet, and then the worms might stand a chance to drown. So you need to create a proper space. The other thing we haven't done, and that was to keep costs low, is to put on a tap. So a lot of worm farms, you'll notice, has got a tap. The problem with the tap is it might start leaking. It obviously increases the cost of the bin, and then you never get all the liquid out with the tap. So this is fairly easy. Once the liquid collects there, you can just take a container and empty it out, and then you can put the 2 little pots back in and put your worm farm back in there, and then you're ready to collect more liquid. The liquid fertilizer that you collect, you can dilute 1 to 10 with clean water and just water your plants with it. It's got some nutrient value, but the thing we're actually after is the microorganisms that are in there. The more microorganisms you put into your soil, they will help to break down the food that's already in the soil to make it available to the plants. So that's our main reason for the worm tea, is not necessarily the nutrient value, but the microorganisms that we're after. Alright, so now we can start building the worm farm. I'm going to use one of these lids, and I'm going to put some water in it. So what we first need to do is create a bit of a barrier for the worms. When you put them in there, there's going to be very little soil in or compost in there for them to live in. So they're going to try and go down, and we need to prevent them from going through the holes into the bottom bin, because there's nothing in the bottom bin at the moment, and if they go through, they're going to dry out and die, and we don't want that. So we need to create a bit of a barrier, and you can use ordinary newspaper or alternatively cardboard. And I've brought some cardboard with today, and you can use any newspaper or any cardboard as long as it's not a high gloss paper. Alright, high gloss paper normally contains stuff like lead or maybe other heavy metals, which is harmful to the worms. If that ends up in the worm tea or in the worm castings, you put it in your garden, your plants will absorb it, and especially if it's fruit or veg you're going to plant in it, the vegetables might absorb it, and then you're going to eat it. So eventually the heavy metals end up in your body, and your body tends to hold onto those heavy metals. It doesn't want to get rid of it. So we use preferably cardboard or ordinary newspaper, and I'm going to soak this cardboard in the water. And I found that the cardboard from beer boxes are the best cardboard to use. And you know why? Has anybody got the answer for me on that one? Because I can have the beer. So we're just going to soak this, and I've taken 5 pieces of cardboard to make a nice thick barrier, and the worms will start feeding on the cardboard as well. So eventually there's going to be no cardboard left in the bottom of the bin. But as you keep on adding food to the bin, the layer is going to become thicker and thicker, and these worms tend to come up to eat. They don't want to go down to eat. So once the cardboard is digested and they come up to eat, they don't want to go down anymore, because remember, the bottom layer is going to be all the poo, and they don't want to go down back into the poo. They're going to come up to the food because they want to eat. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the cardboard and layer it in the bin. And another reason why we wet it is, or some of the reasons why we wet it, is the worms need a moist environment to live in. And also you'll see I didn't cut the cardboard exactly to size, so it's more pliable when it's wet. So you can easily squeeze it into the corners. So I'm just going to take most of these and just put it in here. So this is a very easy step to do. And you'll notice I've kept one piece of cardboard aside because we need this to cover the worms with once we've added the worms into the bin, because the worms like wet or moist, dark conditions. They don't want bright sunlight. They don't, if you open the bin, you'll see once we've set up the bin and you fed the worms the next morning when you open the top cardboard, some of the worms will be lying on top of the food, in between the food and the cardboard. The moment you open it up, they will duck for cover because they don't like bright light. So what we're going to do next is take some of our compost, because remember this is a brand new bin, so we need something for the worms to live in, and we can't just chuck some food scraps in there because that's their food. It's not a living space for them. So what we're going to do is just add a little bit of compost, not too much. The rest you can keep. If you don't have enough food scraps, you can feed this to your worms. If you think you're going to have enough food scraps, you can always use this in your garden. So we're just going to put a layer of about between 3 and 5 centimeters. So you can see it's not much, but this is just going to be their bedding to start off with. And what we're going to do is take some water, because the compost is too dry, and we're just going to spray it a little bit. And this is a nice little handy tool that you can buy from any garden center, because it makes a very soft spray of water. It doesn't spray into the water. So even if you're going to sow some seeds or whatever in seed trays, this is very nice to wet the soil with, and you won't wash out the seeds and so on. So we're not going to put too much water in there because we're still going to add the food, and that also contains more moisture. So we don't want it too wet, especially in the beginning. And this has got, like I said, between 400 and 500 worms in it. It's a sealed container. It's got some holes in the top for aeration, for oxygen for the worms again. So we can just break the seal, open it up, and empty out the container, and you will see how many worms there are in this container. It's quite a lot. So we're just going to spread them out in the worm bin, and they will immediately, with this light, they will immediately start disappearing under the ground or under the compost. And what we can do is take a little bit of water and just rinse out the container, because sometimes there are still some small worms that are stuck to the side of the container, or some cocoons. That's basically the eggs that the worms lay. And interesting fact, inside one of these cocoons there could be up to as many as 7 little worms. All right, so don't throw away the container. You must keep this. I'll tell you now why. And the worms will now spread and go into the compost. So all we need to do now, and this is how easy it is to set up your worm farm, is we take our last piece of cardboard and we cover them, because they want to be kept in a moist environment and they not like to be kept in the dark. Right. And then we can close our worm bin, and we can now put it in a position where we think it's going to be suitable for the worms to live. So like I said, don't put this out where it's going to get direct sunlight. The black plastic container can get up to more than 50 degrees in here. You're going to kill everything that's in there. And don't put it in a place where it's too cold either. So in our manual, you will see that we suggest that you get a table to put the worm bin on, and then you get yourself four plastic trays or whatever. Put a brick in each tray. You make the 4 legs of the table stand on those 4 bricks, and then you fill the trays with water. And the reason for that is so that ants can't climb up the table and get into your worm bin. The worm bins don't have a lot of problems, but ants is the biggest problem. And remember, you can't use any insecticides or even doom or anything to kill the ants with, because that will affect the worms and kill the worms. So Gareth, my sales rep, last week came with an excellent idea, because we buy these bins, and each bin comes with a lid. And like I said, we used to sell them with one lid only. And he said, but why don't we use the second lid and just put the whole worm bin in the second lid, and we fill this with water. So now you can put it anywhere. You know, you don't have to put the table on bricks or anything like that. This is the ideal thing. You just keep that full of water, the ants won't be able to climb in there. So, you know, a blinding flash of the obvious. It was there all along and we never saw it. So you can still do like we've said in the manual, but there's a better and a quicker fix for that problem. Alright, so this is how easy it is to set up your worm bin. And if you go to YouTube, you will find that everything I told you now is in my first video on setting up a worm bin.
Refresh your garden with the Bark Unlimited range of top quality organic products. Bark Unlimited Organics. Refresh nature.